Heather. Yes.
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.
So, wow. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, one. Welcome, all. It's been another wonderful pleasure to sit here and on the Pan-African Daily TV. As I say, Jambo to all of you. It's been a while. It's been a while. We've been off on a walk-in session with the team and trying to put things together. Now today we are back live again, streaming from Europe, where we're sitting and connected all over the continent and the diaspora. And I wish to know how all of you have been doing. I know you've missed us so much because we do. We've been having a lot of feedbacks, of those who are asking, how long is it going to take you for you to come back? And yes, we are here today. We are live and direct. I hope all of us are doing so well. For the meantime, actually nothing has been going on the continent, of course, apart from the little challenges that we all know, but nothing that we can say it's really disturbing, because most of the time when we come up with all this mainstream media kind of attitude of, oh, this is breaking here, I don't know any situation for the past 20 years that has been different or even more on the continent. So it's just a kind of a repetition of something when the mainstream media would sound the loud voice and say this is breaking, and people begin to think like something is new. Nothing is new under the heavens and earth. From since when we were created, things have not been going the way it is going now, or the way anything that has changed. Probably maybe in the essence of us Africans now getting to know ourselves much better, getting to understand ourselves. That is what I think is the biggest that we Africans are creating. Nobody's creating this narrative for us. We must own it because we created it. And we see that a lot of us are beginning to gain our consciousness. We were deep into sleep, but now we are back. We are back to our senses. We are back to our morals. We want to thank the Creator. We want to thank the Almighty. We want to thank the God of our ancestors that is giving us this prophecy of uniting us as a one people that were once lost, but now we found ourselves again. So I don't know where you are connecting from. If you're still waiting and thinking, they're really going to be live today, please, you better check and share and invite one another, because as you can see right here, yes, I see Sanovia, the right people on time. I mean, the family of Pan-African Daily that have always been waiting, they're already seated and they're so happy to connect with us again. Sanovia, how are you doing? I know, yes, I know that we've missed each other, and we do miss you all too. Tonight, we have a special guest, an exclusive, honorable guest, connecting all the way from the diaspora. There's somewhere in California. He's going to be telling us what time is it out there, because, even right here, I was thinking that, 2 p.m. Eastern Africa is everywhere. But now I hear some differences, 3 hours, 4 hours, and stuff like that. So you see, that's also one of the challenges, connecting on the continent. People in the East are almost looking to go to bed now. Some are rising up in Europe, and some are, so that is how scattered we are in terms of time, in terms of space, in terms of know-how, in terms of even the different spaces, I'm sorry, where we are operating on, how they do influence us, So I can be an African, like originally African migrant sitting right here in Germany, and you can understand that my space would have an influence on me. And it's the same thing like the mainland Africans, the same thing like the diaspora, the indigenous diaspora. So we have these categories. When we're talking about our development, the Africa we want, our unity, our spirituality, we have to also take into consideration which spaces are we operating on, and what kind of influences they have on us and shape our narratives and our thinking. So I hope all of us are well seated now. Yes, Desire, thank you for being here. It's been a long time. Yes, I do understand. We have our elder with us connecting, and he wants us to know something very critical, something that we've been talking about all the time anyway. You know, communication is the one and all. And the topic today is, in spite of our differences, doesn't matter what it is, communication is the key. But how do we differentiate what kind of communication is good for us? And so our scholar, our expert, our Pan-African elder and teacher and leader is here to educate us and to teach us, what is the difference between the European psychology and actually our spirituality? How has it influenced the life of the African wherever we are? Remember, we just been spotted all around. If we were just left by ourselves on our continent, probably we wouldn't be having this kind of space and psychologies and discussions. But because we all know that not only did they still, hijacked our people who are now spotted in the Caribbean, in Haiti, in Brazil, all over, even in Europe, right? And even on the continent, there's been a lot of displacement. So we actually are still trying now to go back to our roots to understand who we are. But the good thing in this time and space is that we're being taught by ourselves. The lies, the too much lies, honestly, the too much lies are beginning to unveil themselves as we have our scholars, like Reverend Dr. Niinana Kweku, who is sitting right here with us. I'm so, so happy and honored. And we're all humbled to have him here for the first time. And he's going to be telling us who he is, what has he been doing, the big, massive projects that they've been, carrying out there that no one on the mainland or in Europe or other spaces have ever heard of, right? So, but we're grateful to have them here with us. Back to studio on the Pan-African Daily TV. We don't keep our elders waiting for so long. That could be some kind of challenge and disrespect, right? And so, yeah, but we're happy that you're here. Reverend, good evening and thank you. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this discussion about the diaspora of our people. Um, as you stated, my name is Niinana Kweku. I'm a psychologist. I'm also have a degree in theology, and I have a degree in social work. And I've spent the last 35 to 40 years working in the Bay Area, which is Oakland, San Francisco, Richmond, and where I live at now. Working with families, working in that field. And the good part about working in that field, when I realized what I wanted to do with my life, I knew I didn't want to go to a job. This was the only thing that didn't feel like a job to me. Whenever I was helping a student get back in school, or helping a student do their homework, or helping that parent to reconnect with their children and prepare them for going out here dealing with this structure that they have to deal with every day that's not theirs, I sensed a feeling of wholeness. You know how some people say they go on a job and they work and they feel stressed. They don't want to go to their job anymore. I have never felt that way about working with my own people.
Mm.
So I've spent good 40 years in the Bay Area here, but I started out actually on the East Coast in New York and in Boston. In fact, when Malcolm first came back from Mecca, we joined up with him in Boston. I was unfortunate. I was supposed to be there the night he got killed, but we couldn't get a flight out of Boston, so I didn't make it there. But it was definitely the turning point in my life because he was one of the few people. I hadn't studied about Marcus Garvey and Mobutu and other people on the continent, Nkrumah. I hadn't studied about these people, so I didn't have a concept in about who we are and what, where do I belong? What is my place in this universe? And I think Malcolm kind of shed the light on that gave me that impetus to seek out, all right, what do I want to do? It doesn't matter what my father did or my mother did, or it doesn't matter what anybody else doing. I have to make a decision that I'm going to have to live with the rest of my life, and I want to know what I want to be the one to make that decision. And I realized very early that you can't make that decision listening to other people, because other people are living in this fantasy world that they don't know how to control and take care of their own lives, but they're giving advice out. It's like if you go to a doctor, a psychologist, or a counselor, and more often than not, some of these people have more problems than the people who come in their office to see them. So how do you direct or teach somebody to take care of themselves when you can't take care of yourself?
I wonder.
Yeah. And I've worked with a lot of people over the years in the area, and I find I said, wow, no wonder people are sick. They go to institutions every day where they're sick, to, spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and then they have to come back and be and try to be a human being that's able to impart information to their children. They are not in shape to do it. So I long before Dr. DeJoy, are you familiar with Joy DeJoy? She's
Yes.
she's the lady who coined the phrase, what is it, post-traumatic slave disorder. And so I said, well, everybody, all of us are suffering from that until we wake up and realize that, that we are not stimulated by the things outside of us, but the things inside of us. In European culture, everything is stimulated, is these outside stimulus. They're coming at you 24 hours a day. It's no way to avoid them. The news, the schools, and the services that you go in to get. They're all stimulated from an exterior perspective. Mm-hmm. And so when I started to doing family counseling and so forth, I said, well, these people are paying me to come in here and do a job, but it's up to me to decide whether I want to be of service to this family or not. And if I have to bend their rules or do whatever is necessary to get this family on a healthy plane where they can start thinking for themselves, then I've done my job and more, because they were never going to get that. Mm-hmm. In fact, a case, I'll tell you about this case briefly that I had in San Francisco. This young woman, this sister, she had been living with this guy for like 17 to 18 years, and he'd been beating her up, raping her. And she had been seeing this psychiatrist for 17 or 18 years. The first time this happened. And so when I started that, they turned the case over to me. So the first thing I asked her was, look, how long have you been seeing this doctor that you've been seeing? And she says, well, I've been seeing him for a number of years, 17, 18 years. And I said, well, I'm going to answer one question. Have you gotten any better? And she said that, I'm thinking that you spent 18 years doing something. You should have realized some kind of a process of that brought you out of the pain that you were suffering from. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, now that you asked the question, nobody ever asked me the question. I just come here every week because they tell me to come here every week. And I said, well, I tell you what, I said, I am not going to participate in that. And so I said, if you want to see me, then we're going to have some processes that we're going to work on every time you come in here. And I'm going to give you some lessons and things to take home with you for you to do. And I had that young lady for about 7 or 8 months. I got her into the way I was introducing her to make her spiritual connection, was teaching her how to do yoga and breathing and this whole process and learning how to defend herself, not get into no physical altercations, but you don't have to take it. If you stay somewhere and somebody's beating on you, then at some point you have to accept the responsibility, because they're going to do it because they're sick. And you're feeding that sickness by staying engaged with it. I had this lady on my case for about 7 months. She left that guy she was living with. Her and her daughter got their own place. She started writing. She started painting and stuff again. And I tell you, now when I go to San Francisco, I go by this facility because I know that she's in the community, because she always come up and give me a big hug and tell me, I was so mad when you left, because they don't get that from those doctors there. They are interested in man hours that I've seen. If I'm, I have a caseload of 30, 35 people, I have to see 4 or 5 people a day in order to maintain those man hours so that they can get paid, and that's what they're interested in. So I said, well, look, if you're not getting any better, I'm not going to lead you around here and feed into this sickness. Because if I'm going to sit here and counsel you every week and you're going to go back to this guy every week and get beat up, what is the point? And sometimes saying it plain, as Malcolm used to say it plain. And I didn't say anything extraordinary to this lady. I just said I will not participate in it. I said, but if you want to come here and see me every week, we're going to do some work. And after that, I saw her painting, writing. Her and her daughter had got reconnected. Her and her daughter was not getting along because the life that they was living, there was no respect in the house. The daughter didn't respect her because she was staying with a guy that was disrespecting her. So, you had to take people out of that sickness. And it's ironic that people spend 25, 30 years going back and forth to these institutions. And at the end of that 25 or 30 years, they're sicker than they were when they first started. And so I decided I would not participate in that. And it comes down to basic thing, this whole communication thing. People can understand stuff if you explain it to them in a way that, instead of trying to talk over somebody's head, using a whole bunch of words from the physician's desk reference to describe what their illness is. They got all these illnesses. They have a bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress, and it really just comes down to we live in an unhealthy environment, and people need to understand that. It's not healthy for you to be in a place where you're not happy. It's not healthy for you not to eat properly. It's not healthy for you not to sleep properly. You shouldn't have to take medicines to go to sleep at night, and you would be surprised at the amount of people I know in this country here that live on medications. They got medications for this, they got medication to go to sleep, they got medication to get up. And these are the same people who go into an office setting or in a community setting and are treating the people who come in off of the street or coming from their home. So you have the sick treating the sick. And so I said, well, I will not participate in none of that. If we can't accomplish something, I set goals for people, like I set goals for myself. I expect certain things to take place, and it's my responsibility to get up and make them happen. And I teach my clients that. I don't teach them about no psychology. I don't tell them to go get a psychology book and look up all these fantastic words that they put in here to explain what kind of disorder you got. I ask them, what do you want? What is it? That's a simple question. What do you want? Well, I know I don't want to be beat up no more. I know I don't want to be unhappy anymore. I know I don't want to have to be worried about how I'm going to eat or where I'm going to live. So if you don't want those things to happen to you, then you have to do some things to make sure that change take place. And that means you have to find somebody who you can communicate with at that level where you're able to turn around. But if you're dealing with people who are not, their whole interest is maintaining the status quo, the systems. See, these systems have to have so many people going through them in order for them to continue to get paid. And so what you become is you're already a slave, to a system that's dysfunctional. And now you become even more enslaved in the process by being over medicated, living an unhealthy lifestyle, women living with men they don't love or don't care about. I worked in ran a home for pregnant teens, and like I was telling you, there was girls. The youngest girl I had that was like 11 years old had a baby, and I told him, I said, "Look, I won't participate in that." And to show you how the system works, these young girls could get pregnant by a guy that was 35 or 40 years old, and they would allow this guy to have visiting. to the child. So I said, look, so they put me in charge as the administrator of this place. So I said, look, no guy 40 years old is coming here to see no 13-year-old girl while I'm working here. And the social worker would say, well, we don't want the father to be disconnected from the baby. I said, she is a baby. The child, she's a baby. The girl who has the baby is a baby. But you're going to allow a grown man twice her age or three times her age to come here and pretend like he's her boyfriend and expect her to leave out of here and go into a healthy lifestyle. It ain't going to happen. They used to wind up having 2 and 3 babies by the time they're 18 and 19 or 20 years old. Mm. And by that time, their lives are so messed up because they didn't finish school. They don't have any skills. So what else are they going to do except try to find a boyfriend to circumvent what they don't have? Like I asked this one girl, I said, why do you keep having babies when you can't take care of them? Because she would have babies and then the system would take them because she wasn't old enough to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And you know what I said? Well, she said, I want somebody to love me. I said, how can you say you want somebody to love you when you had the baby and then they took the baby? How can you rationalize that in your mind? And so they started calling me Papa. So you ain't no minister. You act like you're my daddy. I said, well, maybe if you had your daddy around, you wouldn't be here working on your second or third child. And not putting them down, but able to talk to them in a way that that's a human being that you just brought into the world.
Correct.
And for you to allow a social work system to take that child shows that you didn't really care about that baby, or you didn't love that child enough to make a sacrifice to try to prepare a place for that child to be and live healthy. Mm. And that's what I'm talking about. It's communication. Whatever endeavor, whatever field you're in, you have to talk to people in the language that they understand. And if you cultivate yourself enough in your spiritual realm before you leave home, before you leave out of your door in the morning, you leave out of there with a smile on your face, knowing that I'm going out here and I'm going to accomplish certain tasks today, and I'm going to do that because I'm strong and I know what I'm doing and I believe in what I'm doing, and I also believe in the one Creator which lives within me. It ain't somewhere separate from me. I don't have to go to a building to get reconnect with my Creator. He's here all the time, or she's here all the time. Teaching people that so that they can grasp it is a difficult task because, I went to school to become a pastor. And once I got into the pastoring, I was associate pastor at a church in East Oakland. And I did it for about a year. And I told him, I said, look, I can't do this. And because I felt like I was contributing to the stuff that the people are already involved in. People come here, they want to, you're taking money. I sit there and I watch pastors take money from an old lady that got enough money to pay her light bill. And she said, I'm going to give it to this pastor because he's going to make sure some blessings come my way. I said, you should pay your light bill. You understand? They didn't know how to deal with me. They said, well, Pastor Mac ain't going to like you talking like that. I said, look, I'm not talking about Pastor Mac. I'm talking about what's right. I can't take money from you and put it in my pocket and know that you gave me that money from the light bill that you had to pay next week. And that's when I got up and I said, I will not do that. And I started to really come, as I studied more, I become to realize that I am more of a pastor now than I ever was when I was in the church, because everything I do in my life is a kind of pastoring or ministering. If I see somebody in trouble, if I see somebody hurting, and they ask for my advice, I'm going to give them the best possible advice I can give them. And that means I have to be real. I can't go in there with some set plan of action, what they call out here now, what do they call it? Proven, what they call proven processes that they put in place. They'll have a process by which everybody, if 50 people come through the door, all the 50 people have to go through the same process. I said, I don't deal with people that way. When people come into my house, I want to know who you are. Well, don't you want to know what's been happening? I said, I want to know who you are first. And then we're going to find out, how you feel about who you are. And if you don't feel good about that person who you are, then I can't help you over here by using a bunch of therapeutic processes that they've taught us to use. So once I find that out, and that's what I'm talking about, communication, I find out, all right, this is who you are. And then I say, okay, where do you want to be? Nobody wants to say, I'm going to go back and get beat up by the man I'm living with, or I'm going to go back and have another baby out of wedlock, or I want to go back to a house where it's miserable. I stay out half the night because I don't want to go there. It's so miserable for me to live there. Nobody wants to do that. And you just have to be that sounding board that says it's okay for them to feel that way. And it's okay for you not to do that. Sure, there has to be some changes made and some processes put in place to make it so you can get out of there, but you can't fix it by continues to, as my folks used to say, you can't wallow in the mud and don't expect to get some mud on you. And so I teach people that leave whatever it is that you involved with that has you depressed, or that has you in a state where you're not happy, or it has you in a place where you're being abused, uh, whatever that is, we have to set forth with a plan. Everything a plan has to be in place for everything. You have to communicate a real plan for people's lives to change. And a lot of times, when I'm talking to people from the church and they get upset, well, the Lord did this and that. And I tell them just like Malcolm used to tell them, hey, you just came out of church, but this stuff is still going on out here. You're still hungry. You're still living in a rundown building. Or you still don't have a job that's paying you enough to live. You still are not happy. So if you're going somewhere on Sunday and you're spending all your day in that process singing and shouting and going through whatever process that they go through, and it doesn't bring you any result, why do you keep going there?
Absolutely.
Why do you keep? And I tell people, I said, look, I'm not trying to tell you what to believe, but I'm telling you, you have to question what it is you're involved with. Mm-hmm. If you're involved with something that doesn't benefit you, then you need to figure out, what about this do I need to change? And most people want to change. They don't have the support necessary to change. These programs, these so-called programs that they have in the community that's supposed to help people, they're only open from 8 to 5. I said, these people live 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And even if they, work 8 to 5, they can probably get to see their counselor 1 hour out of a week. So that's 4 hours out of the month. The rest of the month, they in that misery that they came out of, and you haven't developed a communicated plan to them that they could be working on. And I used to tell all my clients, when you come into my office, I want to see something that you've done this week to change your life.
Correct.
If I don't see that, then I'm going to think that maybe I'm not doing my job. I don't blame it on them. I say, I'm not doing my job. If I sit you and allow you to come in here every week and there's no changes, you're still miserable. So what are we going to do? We're going to sit up in here and be miserable together, And so I try to get people to understand that their happiness and my happiness depend on each other. Mm. If I am a counselor, a therapist, or a minister, or whatever I am, if I'm truly true to that, and that's who I am in here and in here, then I will not allow it to fail. I won't allow it to fail, because that is not who we are as people. My grandfather was a slave in the state of Virginia. I'm dating myself now. My grandfather was a slave. He died when he was 107. My daddy was the baby. He had 18 kids. Can you believe this? My granddad had 18 kids. He had 2 wives. And my father was the baby of all of those, And the one thing, my grandfather never went to school a day in his life, but he could read better than you and me. My grandmother, you never see them pick up a book because they come out of slavery. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. But they never lost a moment at teaching us to be ourselves. Don't go out in the street and act a fool. Don't do something that brings shame back on the family or back on the community. You understand what I'm saying? They
Yeah.
never they never lost the ability to do that, and they didn't have to learn to read and write. So when I hear people talking about, well, the person is uneducated and they're under, that has nothing to do with it.
Correct.
Has nothing to do with it. And so
Mm.
we have to get back to people what Dr. Adams and I have been trying to do. Say instead of these first, like when you send kids out to kindergarten when they 3, 4 years old, instead of sending them in the classroom trying to make them draw X's and count and so on, let's teach them communication. We can do it through play, interaction, activities, but let's teach them communication. And in fact, we went into a school in East Oakland, and they were having one of the worst schools in the area because all of the students were failing. So we said, give us the worst 10 students you have. They gave us 10 boys that all were making straight F's. And when I say they were making straight F's, they were proud of it. They would come in and high five each other who made the most F's. That's how tough they were. So we said, okay, we're going to allow you guys to get away with that today because you knew. But we're going to tell you what we're about in here, what we're trying to do. You will learn to read. You understand? These kids couldn't even read, see the cat run. They in the 7th, 8th, 9th grade. They could not read what you call a primer. They could not read. So what we started doing was on the weekends, we knew a lot of them didn't have fathers at home. They were staying with their grandmothers or their aunts or somebody. We go by, pick them up on the weekend, take them fishing, take them out in the woods. And when we took them out there, we would teach them something about themselves. I remember one time we took these kids and we dropped them off on this island. They had never been out of the city before. They were standing there in a bunch, and we dropped them off and went back on the boat. When we came back, they were still standing there, but they didn't know what to do. They had no clue about how to function out there because nobody ever taught them anything. Mm-hmm. So they get in these communities where they're unsupervised. They don't have the ability to use what we would say a rational mind because they don't have a rational mind. And for all intents and purposes, you could say most of the people who live in those conditions, there's a level of insanity there. Because what does insanity mean? Insanity means that you continue to do something that's detrimental to your well-being, and you keep doing it thinking it's going to change at some point in time. Mm-hmm. It's not going to change until you change it. It's not Allah, it's not Jesus, it's not Buddha. It will change when somebody can direct you, when you find somebody that you're able to communicate with that shows enough interest in you that show that you're important. And so when I started, I was a troublesome kid in Boston. I went to jail, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I sure didn't have any money for a lawyer. But this one guy, this one brother, didn't even know me hardly. Just met me 2 or 3 weeks before that, but he hadn't seen me for a few days, and he came looking for me. And he said, because I know I live down the street, but he said, I know that if he was around, he would have stopped and said hello or something. And he came down to the jail and found me and went and put his house up to get me out of jail. Yeah. And I said, well, look, I don't know how I'm going to pay you back or when I'm going to be able to pay you back. He said, all I want from you is your word that you will stay here and you will see this thing through. And I was thinking, nobody ever asked me for my word before. That must have some worth. I must make it have some worth. Only I can. So I had to let him know before I walked out that jail that I will stay right here and I'm going to fight this thing through. And I'm going to do what you asked me to do. And I tell you, that was the first time that I ever felt, and this was even before I met Malcolm. It was the first time that I felt like I must be worth something. This guy, he didn't care nothing about, he cared about his family, but he didn't care so much that he wasn't willing to put his house in jeopardy for my well-being. So I said, well, if he cares that much, if he's willing to make that much of an investment in me, then I can't do less. And so from that point on was when I really started to following Malcolm. I got out of the street. I stopped, interacting with the people that I normally interact, because most of them were criminals or people who were on the street doing all kinds of stuff. Because at back in the day, we thought we had to do it because it was hard for blacks to. You think it was hard now? Back then, you couldn't get a job simply because you were black, and they wouldn't. They didn't hide it. They said, "No, we're not hiding. You don't get no job here." I lived in Brooklyn. Brooklyn has an unemployment rate among black men is about 75% right now.
Mm-hmm.
You see them, if you see pictures of them out there washing people's windows as they drive by and all kinds of stuff. They be on the train and they be singing and doing all kinds of stuff to make money, because it's very difficult in those places where you have large populace of us unemployed, till it reduces them to have to do these things that they normally wouldn't do. And so we have to find ways to get people. And the reason I left Brooklyn was all of my cousins and all the kids that I went to school with were none of them doing anything positive. And I said, I don't want to be around here when I'm 25 years old, washing somebody's windows. I want something different. So I left out of there on my own, and I think I had about $11 in my pocket, and I got on the bus and I went to Boston. I got to Boston. I didn't even have a place to sleep. But I met a person, believe it or not, while I was sitting there having a cup of coffee after I got off the bus in Boston. He said, well, look, let me tell you something. He says, yeah, I seen you've been sitting here a long time. And, he was a person like me. I watch and notice stuff going on around me. And he said, you look like you're stranded or something. I said, well, stranded isn't a word. I don't have nowhere to sleep tonight. So he said, well, look, I ain't got but one bed. You can sleep on the floor. I'll give you some blanket. I said, well, that's great. And I stepped on his floor for 2 weeks until I got myself a job and stuff. So I know that there are good people out there. There are good people out there who want to help, but they're afraid. They don't trust themselves enough. And by me meeting those kind of people, instilled that trust in me, where I was able to, no matter what, and I would go and do stuff for people, like when I was working here in some of those programs, and people would say, man, you shouldn't give your money to those people. They ain't going to do nothing. I said, well, that's their choice. My choice is to let them know that I'm going to try to assist you if I can. I'm not going to let you use me, but if I can help you, I'm going to try to help you. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how to love. We don't know how to communicate love. We don't understand what love is. We don't know what spirituality is. We think that reading a book is knowledge. It has nothing to do with knowledge. And it's not even education, because education is supposed to try to assist you with kind of being a part and building your own reality.
Correct.
But it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. And what's amazing to me is that we have so many educated people and good parents, well-intentioned parents, who want the best for their kids, but they don't know how to do it.
Correct.
But because of the way they've been trained and communicated with, they think that, well, this is the right way. What they're doing is the right way. We just having a little bad luck. I say, it's not bad luck when your son comes in and wants to jump on his mother. That's not bad luck. It's something else went wrong long before you got to a bad luck stage. So I work with kids like that. I had a kid once, he was like 14, and he come in and grabbed his mother by the throat and wanted to choke her. And I said, how dare you put your hands on your mother? What is wrong with you? I'm not talking to you like no psychologist, no counselor. I'm talking to you like a man. No man would put his hands on his mother's throat. And I told him, I said, I don't know what you're going to do from this point on, but you will not do it in front of me. And so he always respected when I had those meetings with him, he respected that, and he would but he wasn't getting enough of that. See, once you put food for thought out for people, they have to keep being fed. because I've seen people. It's just like saying you've seen people go into what they call treatment programs, and like they may be on drugs or something. They go in and get clean. They come out and they're looking good, and then 90 days later you see them back doing the same thing over again. They're not being fed. We need to be fed. Even you and I, and no matter how old we get, and I find out myself that some days I have to get up and kickstart. I have to kickstart myself. I could sit there and say, well, I don't want to do this today, or I don't feel like doing this today. I can't do that because if I do that, guess what? I'm giving away my power the way we've been
Correct.
giving up the power to the system. I'm not
Mhm.
giving up my power. If I don't make it, it will be because the creator have decided that, hey, I'm no longer useful on this planet. It's time for me to go on to the next phase of whatever it is after there for me. And so getting people to understand that, I studied under this bishop. He was a real smart guy. And I asked him about this whole psychology of being saved. You know how people go to church, they say, I'm saved. And,
Mhm.
and then they go home and do the same trash over and over, but they saved. And I just asked him, I said, what is this stuff? I don't understand this. I said, I've read the Bible back and forth. I've studied scriptures. I don't understand where people get that from. It's the indoctrination. They've been indoctrinated. They've been told by their grandparents that this is going to save them. This is going to save them. And then they go in, it gets reinforced, reinforced, reinforced. And so after a while, they're sitting around believing it, even though their lives is miserable. They And you know what this bishop told me? He says, Kweku, you save yourself. See how simple that is?
Huh.
Because I was trying to figure it out, because I was in school. What is this? I don't understand this stuff these people are going through. He said, you save yourself. I said, well, why don't somebody tell them? He said, they don't want to hear that. You know, he quoted a passage in the Bible. I don't know how much you read the Bible, but there's a scripture in the Bible that says that you shouldn't give people meat until they've been weaned off of the milk. So this was the scripture. So I said, but see, here's the other thing. People don't read the history behind those scriptures, what they meant at that time when it was said, who it was said to, and why it was said. They
Mhm.
just quote those scriptures and people buy into them. And I said, wow, that don't make sense to me. That was myself thinking now. That don't make sense to me that you have information that can help somebody and you're not going to give it to them because you don't think they're ready for it. Who are you? Are you setting yourself up as their savior, or what are you doing here? And I started to preaching it, and a few times he let me get in the pulpit because as associate pastor, you only get to preach when the regular preacher isn't there, or whatever, whenever he didn't feel like it. But every time he let me up in there, I made sure that I bought some gems to the pulpit, and people were saying, Mac is getting mad. He's getting angry because he would question a lot of my stuff. I said, well, he showed me where it's different at. You validate what's wrong with it. It's one thing to sit up in here and tell these parishioners this stuff. I said, but you can't just tell me I'm wrong and you don't have nothing to back it up. If I tell you something, it's your responsibility to go and research it. If I hear another preacher preach about something in a church and I don't think it's right, I'm going to go. The first thing I'm going to do is go and research it, and then I'm going to come back to him next Sunday. You know what you said your last week? That wasn't quite right. And they don't like that. They don't like to be questioned. So they've
Mm.
kind of built this year kind of wall around themselves where they don't want to be questioned. And how dare you question me? So I said, well, I won't be a part of this. Then you guys can be a part of it. But I'm going to try to do the best I can to try to. I may not see as many people as you do. I may not help as many people as you say you're helping, but at least it'll be coming from a good place. I am I believe that the Creator gave me the ability to question stuff, and it doesn't matter who it is. If somebody tell you to do something and you don't feel right about it, and you go do it anyway, what that is to me, that's like saying I don't have no power, I don't have no control of myself, and the Creator didn't give me any ability to make any decisions about myself. They don't want you teaching that kind of message in the church, because half of the people would get up and walk out, and they would find them another counselor or another pastor or somebody who was going to give them the truth. They don't teach the truth. They teach the same thing that the people teach in basic education. They run them through there. Kids graduate from school, can't read. We got kids playing. It used to be we had kids playing in the NFL, couldn't read and write. I don't know if you remember Dexter. What was his name? Dexter Wines. He played for the Washington Skins, a National Football League team, and he had won the Super Bowl, and he was crying, and because somebody had handed him something to read, and he was standing on the field crying. He says, "I can't read," and he had graduated from the University of Maryland, I think it was. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of system we have, that a human being can go through 12, 16 years and can't read. We could read and write before we left the house, before we ever went to the school. And we were taught by people sometimes who couldn't read and write themselves. Grandmother would tell us when we would bring homework in, they didn't know what it was. They said, you sound it out. They'd make you go through a process by which you would have some comprehension about what your homework was that night. Mm. And yet we have, in this day and time in 2021, Oakland and Richmond probably has two of the worst school systems there is. I think I went out to graduation, one of the high schools out there. There was about 3,000 students was supposed to graduate, but only about 60 of them graduated out of 3,000. So what's going to happen to those other kids? Because this is a high-tech area here now, Oakland, San Francisco. You ain't getting no job unless you have some knowledge of one of the technical fields. So they're not preparing these kids to even go and get a skill position at something that they like. So, and then we wonder, why are they shooting each other? Why are they dealing drugs? They're doing that stuff because it's the only thing that they know how to do. It's the only thing that they can do, that they don't need somebody to come and teach them about it for the most part. They can go out there in the street and learn by hard knocks how to get away with certain stuff. So we have to stop this. We have to stop. And I tell people all the time when I go and speak, and people think I'm crazy, I say, you know what you need to do if you want to change the school system? Take your children out of it. Take your child out of school. What are they going to do if they don't have no students to teach? What are they going to do? Because first of all, do you know that if your kid goes to school in the Bay Area, that California used to have a law that they could only fail your student one time. And even the next year, even if they was making straight F's, they had to pass them on anyway so they could graduate. What politician sits down and makes a rule like that? And then I asked myself, what teaching association would accept those kind of rules? Because what you're saying, if you accept that, is I don't care nothing about these students. I'm just scared about my paycheck.
Correct.
You know, so it's not one part of this system. It's the whole system. That's what Garvey them talked about. That's what Kwame talked about. That's what Malcolm talked about. We must establish our own United States of Africa globally. Yeah. We must buy from each other. We must spend with each other. We must support each other, because there is no way possible to be able to communicate with people whose the very foundation that they live on is based on a lie. Mm-hmm. The foundation of the United States is built on a lie. That's why they're so mad about this whole critical race theory. Are you familiar with the critical race theory they're talking about in the school? Where they want to teach the kids, which is not that. They want to teach the kids about what happened to African people in this country from 1619, up until now. The people are raised in heck. They don't want it taught in the schools. And I asked them one question. I said, they didn't have no problem. They didn't have no problem with those lies being taught to students about slavery. And they had no problem. There are many pictures and artifacts with bringing their children out to watch them have a Friday night fry where they would just hang a black man. But now all of a sudden they don't want them to know the truth about what they did in order to maintain control over uh, over the people that now are referred to as Negroes, African Americans, or Black. And I choose to refer to myself as a man from Africa, and that's all I am. You can't make me African American just because you call me African American. African American delegates that you are a citizen of the United States. We're not citizens of the United States because we don't get the full benefit of being citizens. Our children are still being murdered in the streets by the police. We don't have any, although we have all these people up in the Congress, the Senate, the governor's office, and the mayor's office. We have the United Black Caucus. These people have done nothing to change the situation that we currently live in America, in this place called America. We had a Black president, Barack Obama. You can't tell me anything substantive that he did while he was in there. They allowed that process to take place because they knew they weren't going to let him do anything. So what is it that we need to do? It ain't about what the Congress is going to do or what the Senate is going to do or what the governor is going to do. It's about what are we going to do as a global people to bring about the process by which we come together and with one purpose. And that one purpose is that we as Africans will once again operate like real human beings, loving, trusting, caring for each other. We must do that. We must teach that in the schools. We must teach that in the churches. Whatever institutions we put in place, that has to be the mainstay. We are together. That is the primary purpose, that we are, we are communal. That's what community stands for. Communal. We are together. We are one. We're not separate. We need to learn that. We need to teach that. We need to live that. And we need to love doing it. Thank you. Where did you go, Dr. Tata? Hello?
Oh my God. Hello?
Hello, you disappeared on me there.
No, I mean, there was just some kind of, noise in the background here, and I couldn't hear you, so I had to adjust the speakers because my technicals, they're all around the place. Yes, but I hear you. Yes.
Questions you want to ask me about any of this process?
The question that I wanted to say, I mean, it's not a question. You already have been saying it. Is like, where should our focus be? Because we all know that it comes from the miseducation, listening to some other people teach us who we are. So what is the solution? I know that you're trying to put out a structure out there, this Africa-centered university. Shouldn't that be the solution now? Because even from one generation to the other, talking about our spirituality, we've never actually had what is our own spirituality, what is the spirituality of our ancestors, or even the creator. He must have given us something that belongs to us. Why is it that despite all the bad results, we keep doing the same thing, like you said?
Yeah, well, one of the things is that when we got introduced to all of these so-called strange religions, when they first came into the continent, they referred to stuff that our people was doing as voodoo and black magic and all this stuff. But what they really was, it was the spiritualness, that awareness that they saw. But they also recognized that it was a cohesiveness to what we were doing together. And in order to enslave us, or to distribute us around the world and have control over all our resources, somehow they had to take advantage of the fact that we're not. They're in control. They had to show that they were in control. Well, you take like even now, if you go to some places, I forget what country it is in Africa, but somebody opened up a school there, and they didn't want the local language taught. The people, but they wanted to have that. They had to either speak whatever was British or Dutch or whatever. They had to speak whatever language that they spoke. But how are you doing me a favor? You come into my country and tell me how to speak or how I should speak or what language I should speak. That's still uh, that controlling mechanism. That's whenever we allow them to be involved in our process. And when we say, no, we don't want you in our process, then they start screaming about reverse discrimination. And that was one that they used to try to throw that jacket on Malcolm all the time. You teaching hate. He wasn't teaching hate. He said, we're doing for self. I know lots of brothers and sisters do for self. It ain't got nothing to do with hating white people. I don't have the energy to waste on going around hating white people or separating white people based on whether or not they're liberal or whether they're not liberal. My thing is that we have to demand respect. We have to you can't take my dignity away from me. You can't take my manhood away from me. So if I allow you to do that, then I'm succumbing to what people refer to as white supremacy or capitalism or whatever ism that's in place that controls the masses of people. And anybody that knows anything about capitalism, the way they always look at communism and fascism and all these other they bad things they say. Well, look at what is capitalism done. Are you familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson? He does a thing on economics for Black people. And he said, when we were freed from slaves, our people was freed from slaves, they had less than 1% of the resources. That was the amount of wealth that they had at the end of slavery. In 2021, African people still have less than 1%. Still have less than 1%. So where's the progress at? If we don't make any progress economically, where we can have our own schools, we can have our own institutions, we can have our own health centers. It makes no sense to send your sick child to see people who are teaching sickness. I always tell people, do you have a clue? And I've been trying to find out. It's one of the things that I'm going to do some research on. I'm going to find out how many people are actually connected to a system that keeps them enslaved to that system. They have to go there for this, their medication. They have to go there because they're claiming they're sick, and they are sick. Mentally, spiritually, that is a form of sickness. But the thing about the way that America deals with it, if you go in and say I'm sick or I'm having these thoughts or I'm not, I'm scattered, I don't know which direction to go in, they got a pill for you. I have some information for you. That's all I'm going to give you is some information on how you can get better. Because that's the thing. When you talk about sickness, most of it, where does sickness begin? It begins in the mind first. Then it goes all out through the body. So we have to teach our people that this up here and this here connected together, we can overcome all things. That is your spirituality. That is your creator. That is what the creator gave us at the onset of the creation.
I share.
He gave us the ability to heal ourselves. We allowed a strange entity to come in and teach us, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. And we've been doing it that way ever since. If you study history, go back 10,000 years. Have you ever read a book by Chancellor William called The Destruction of Black Civilization? Dynamite book. You get a chance, read it. It's about Chancellor William. But he tells you about, and we're not talking about 400 years of slavery. We're talking about 10,000 years of this institutionalized process going on that has created what we now refer to as people with a slave mentality. Because mentally, we are still slaves. We're slaves to a capitalist system that we haven't made any progress since 65 or 63 when they were supposed to free the slave. We haven't made any progress. And look at all of the times when there was progress. You heard of Black Wall Street, right? They bombed it. under the guise that some black guy had whistled or said something to a white woman. They blew up the whole town. Black folks, they owned banks, they had their own insurance companies, they had their own stores, and they blew it up. They did the same thing in St. Louis. They did the same thing in Rosewood. They did the same thing in another city in North Carolina. But historically, all over the city, these things are recorded. That's one of the reasons why they're fighting so hard against this critical race theory, because they'll be teaching them what they've done to these people. You know, and they're still doing it today. They're still doing it. So we have to find ways to get our people to stop participating. We had a program in these. In fact, I'm working with a group in Oakland now, the African Resource Center. What they do is they work with immigrants who are freshly coming here from the continent, teach them how to immaculate and find their way through the system here. But by the same time, we have to teach them, because there's this strain with some so-called American Negroes and people from the continent. You know, they have these false ideas about what the relationship should be or is. In fact, I was at a gas station one day, and this guy stopped me. I don't know what part of the continent he was from, but I think it was Cameroon or somewhere. And he came up to me and he says, "You're not African." So I said, "What would make you say something like that to me?" He said, "I see you I had on an African garb, you know, and everything. But I was on my way to speak at some place, and that's the way I was dressed." He said, "You're not African." I said, "Let me tell you something. We live in a country where they're trying to tell us what we are and what we're not. And now here you are coming in, being a participant and helping them promote that crap." I said, I don't allow them to tell me whether I'm African, and I'm not going to allow you to tell me whether or not I'm African, because that's not your choice to make. But see, these are the kind of things that people, and I used to hear people say out there, "Man, the African people don't like y'all." I said, "Well, look, then that means that we have to work harder at reaching across to wherever we have to reach across and meet them and say, wait a minute, we don't have no differences. Our differences is getting control of our resources. You know, we don't have no differences." But they have managed to educate us to the place where we're divided up. I was looking at, are you familiar with the Rock Newman show? And it was really,
I want to know. Yes.
Yeah, they were over there doing DNA stuff. And I said, wait a minute. There were people on that talking about, you're 18% British and you're 15% that, and the rest of us African. Why are people wasting their money on this? You know, why? I want to know my. If you want to know your roots, go do your research yourself. Don't go pay somebody hundreds of dollars to take a swab and put them in your mouth, and they tell you what part of the country that your third or fourth grandmother or something came from. And that's what it really comes down to. See, these to me, and these were black people, and they were saying we get a lot of people coming against us, and they don't understand the divisiveness that's incorporated into that process, because we already have African people around claiming they're not African. I've even had brothers and sisters here say, "Well, we're not African, man. Well, our people have been out of Africa 500 years." I said, it doesn't make any difference. If you've been out 10,000 years, you're still African. So you buy the man's story that you're a creation, and they buy this trap because, like, some brothers will go over to places like South Africa and different places. And do you know, and I'm sure you probably know that as an American, so-called American Negro, you go to South Africa and you get treated like you're white.
Correct.
Yeah. We can't allow them to do that. That's why we tell people, look, if you're going to go over there like some of these stars who go over places like that because they can make money, you shouldn't go over there. It's no different than when back in the 50s, when black people could entertain on a stage or a restaurant, or a club or something, but they couldn't go in there and watch it. Other black people could not go in there and watch it. So what is that doing? We're participating in our own separate, and we accepted it. And so that's what our people are doing. And it is a constant battle. And sometimes you feel like your head is swelling up, you're getting ready to explode, but then you get in touch with your reality. Your reality tells you that I am bigger than this, I'm better than this, and this is not what my creator created me for. I'm not going to succumb to this. If you want to rise above something and you're going to tell me you can't rise above a trap that these so-called and most of them, I would almost say a lot of them are not even racist. It's the system that they put in place to maintain power. Just like they're on the continent, they get the oil wells. I was checking out where they, I think it was it Nigeria or where it was, where they went into the oil wells and they were going to give the people, I think, 18% of the profits from the oil wells in their own country. What kind of crap is that? That's like somebody coming in my yard digging an oil well and tell me they're going to take most of the money. And these are the kind of things that we keep doing, and that's why it's so important. It's just, do you remember when everybody was up in arms about apartheid in South Africa, and people stopped buying from Bank of America, Wells Fargo, stopped supporting certain businesses unless they stopped? Well, these people didn't stop. All they did was change their names on the paperwork, and they were still in control of the masses of the wealth in South Africa, although there's changes gradually being made. But we don't want changes gradually being made. It's time for them to go. It's time for us to go back and take our rightful place in the world.
Right.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, there's something that is actually disturbing, and I'm saying it because, like you say, you are a psychologist, and we're talking about this. I mean, you take a picture like two zebras. I mean, just a zebra, two of them. Where on earth would you even if I want to say you are not African, probably I could even say you are not raised or born in Africa. But to just look at someone that looks like you, like I say, a zebra, the same color, the same stripes, and you say he's not African, is it? What kind of level of sickness? What kind of level of sickness can make a zebra look at another zebra with the same stripes and say you are not a zebra? For instance,
the same sickness that I don't know if you ever heard this story or not, but they said one time there was an eagle, and he fell out of the nest when he was a baby into the chicken coop. They could not get this bird, as he grew up, they couldn't get him to go and fly because he thought he was a chicken. You understand what I'm saying? We have been trained and indoctrinated that we are something over here. We are less than human. We're 3/4 human. If you got one drop of African blood in you, you're not human. We have been taught and inundated with this though for hundreds and thousands of years. You're not beautiful if you're black. You're not beautiful if you have big lips. You're not beautiful if you wear your hair natural. We have been indoctrinated with this crap for not just these 40 years, but for thousands of years. If you could read history, where the turn of the century, and I think Chancellor Weeds was talking about that, how they started referring to the so-called European race as being the most beautiful people on the planet. Well, who made that decision? It was one of them. How dare he come out and say, of all of our beautiful sisters on the planet, but Europeans are the most beautiful people on the planet.
Yeah, but the issue is how does someone that doesn't look like me tell me that I'm not beautiful because I don't look like him? All right, that I can understand that he wants to defend. But how do me look at you who look like me and say you're not like me? That's one in between us.
That's the level of sickness that I'm talking about, psychological. I think they call it, what did they call it? I had something written down somewhere. Let me see if I have it here. Oh, I can't find it right now. But it's a sickness that, if you wait a few years, I have what you call a condition of, hold on one second.
All right, like, well,
this is called,
okay. Okay.
This is a Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. Every year, they add some new disorders to this book. Where do they get them from? They make them up from bringing us in by the groups. And what they do when they do these tests, they figure out, okay, if we get 100 people in here and 50 of them start showing signs of this, then we'll call it this. And then the next thing they do is they go and they create a medication for it. Pharmacology is one of the biggest things in this here capitalist system. Medicine. That's why they don't want people to have free health care. That's why they fight hard against trying to get people health care where they can either low cost health care, because that's where the money is. The money is in drugs. And if there's nothing for them to cure, then they don't have any reason to be making drugs. So they have to create these, what do they call them? I think you're familiar with Omar Johnson, right? He called it ADHD, ain't no daddy home, but they call it ADHD. It's supposed to be some psychological dysfunction, short circuiting in the brain, or what people like to refer to as what is it? They think that somehow you're not getting the brain activity is not normal in your brain, and it's because of some kind of low functioning biological effect. So what they do is they give you a medication. It doesn't cure anything, but it may say a child is very hyperactive and they can't sit down in a classroom. They give him this pill, and the child is sitting there in that class, bombed out of his mind. To them, that's saying that we maybe don't have a cure for what's ailing his child, but we do have something to kind of keep him under control. And that's the basic thing that they try to do in this side, is to keep us under a certain amount of control. And anytime that somebody come up with, just like with the 1619 project, wanting to teach the whole gamut of the historical context of 1619 up until 9,400 years of slavery, why don't you want people to know the truth? Because the truth will make you well. But even with that truth being taught, you're going to have people out there sick is going to reject it.
Of
And
course.
that's why I was on the radio in New York the other night, and there was brothers and sisters and cops and people calling up, and they was fighting us tooth and nail. Man, I don't want my kids to be taught that either. What is wrong with you as a black man or a black woman? You don't want your kids to know the truth. And that's where we are. And that's the sickness.
Mhm.
We haven't got, maybe in the process of us doing shows, we'll come up with an acronym to label that, what that sickness is. Like way Dr. Joy did when she come up with post-traumatic slave disorder. I can guarantee you, if they haven't already, there will be a medication coming forth for post-traumatic slave disorder. But it'll only serve to further desensitize these people that there is a problem. And that's basically what it is. They give you some medication that you don't care. You're sick, but you don't care that you're sick. This whole medical process in America, it's not about healing. So when you talk to African people and people who are getting back to the natural habits of our people, they talk about healing.
Mhm.
Healing. They don't
Yes.
talk about no healing in this country. They talk about giving you medication, and when that one stops, they give you another one, and that stops, they give you another. Don't say nothing about no healing.
Mm.
And basically, you could go to somebody going to the doctor and say, well, okay, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes, you have XYZ here. Now, here's some things you can do. You can stop eating all this garbage. You can go exercise. And I guarantee you, in 6 months, if you do this every day, your diabetes, sugar level is going to go down. You're going to lose weight. Your blood pressure is going to drop. All these things. But they're not going to tell you that.
Mhm.
Because if you do, they don't make no money off of it. The capitalist system is a process by which the people who are at the top of it needs to keep control over the masses of us. And the way that they do is they make the cost of everything within that umbrella so high that we are constantly working, just trying to survive so we can make it in that system. without getting anywhere. It's like now down in Los Angeles, I forget how many thousands of people are on the street homeless. They took the bathrooms off of the street. Let me show you how this system thinks. And we have to understand, we have to be able to look at these things for what they are. They got all these homeless people, so they take all the toilets off the street. You know why? Because some of the business people didn't want them toilets and stuff around because they thought it would attract these people. So you know what people are doing in Los Angeles now? They're carrying little buckets around with them when they have to use the bathroom.
What?
Yes. Check it out. Just whenever you get a chance to Google it. They're carrying buckets around. They use the bathroom, and they took the bathrooms off the street. You know, they have those little cubicles that they put up on the street for people to go and use the bathroom. They took them off the street, and these people are carrying buckets around to use the bathroom. And we don't see what's coming. We just ignore it. If we're not in it immediately, you take like the people who think that they're middle class. They're not really middle class, but they think they're middle class. And then the price of everything is constantly escalating out here. In California, out here, you go in Oakland, San Francisco, an apartment costs you $5,000-$6,000 in San Francisco. In Oakland, now they're going up $3,000-$5,000. So most of the people can't afford to live there anyway. It's kind of like you familiar with Dubai, right?
Mm-hmm.
How all the people out there, I think the average income there is about $200,000 a year. And the people who actually do the work in the city can't afford to live there. They live out in little villages out in the outskirts of the city and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's what this is coming to. At one time, I think we had about 1,500 people who was homeless in the Bay Area here. Now they say it's like 15,000. Every night, 15,000 people sleep out on the streets. So just happen we have better weather here than we do on the East Coast. But who wants to sleep on the street where you can't take a bath? And you know what I'm saying? But this is what people are being reduced to, the so-called middle class. How are you going to be middle? In order to be middle class, you got to make a couple $100,000 a year or better. Most people aren't making it. Most people are making enough to live on. And with all of these things that we look at every day and we talk about and we point out these discrepancies in how the system works, we have to find a way to curriculize it. So at a very young age, first we start out teaching our students how to respect each other, teach them how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Then we teach them about the system around them and what they're going to have to do not to get caught up in that trap, like most of us are caught up in. Because a lot of us went out and bought houses that we can't afford. I had a friend of mine, she bought a house not far from where I live at. 7 or 8 bedrooms, $700,000 for the house, okay? Nobody but her and her husband. And she was showing me around the house. She was showing me. And she said, we never even go in these rooms over here. And I'm going through the house and I'm saying, what do you need them for if you don't even go in them? You know?
That's also one of the problems. We also going to make that a topic. You know, sometimes we just get into it and then we get hooked up.
Yeah, people
in Germany is pretty different. In Germany, I mean, you have that middle class, but it has a flat kind of a system where they give you a house or even a place accordingly to your size of the family. It doesn't matter whether you're a mayor or whoever. If you're 3 persons, you're going to rent an apartment or you're going to own a structure that is like that. And so you find a system that is a flat system from the infrastructures and that. It's difficult to actually see the middle class of that because
that's called socialism here, right? That's what they don't want here, because then they won't be able to charge you $3,000-$4,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment with 1.5 baths. You know what I'm saying? You don't even get 2 full baths in the place, but this is why they do that. And so now, and it doesn't matter. I think what is the minimum wage? The minimum wage in California is like $15. Nobody can't live here making $30 an hour. So what good is it to raise the minimum wage to $15 now? If you can't live off of 30, how do you live off 15? And this is what's going on across this country, and people in other parts of the country where California is one of the highest states, New York is one of the highest ones, Connecticut, Boston, Rhode Island, places like that, they're very high, expensive to live. And places like Atlanta used to be cheap. A lot of people used to leave here and they would go to places like Atlanta going to South. But now that migration started, the property values down in those places are going sky high. So now people aren't having any place to live. I think this year Economist was on last week or so, and he said there's 35 cities, not 35, 35 states out of the 50 states. 35 states where if you're making the minimum wage, you can't stay there in America right now. 35. So,
but Reverend, what kind of a sickness is that in the human, that this greed of, even though is that because of a lack of something that you think now I need so much? I try to understand, or we try to research and understand why do, and particularly people who even don't have, why do they want something? What is it? What is there? What is there? This greed of just having everything, or wanting to get something that is extravagant, or what? What is that kind of a syndrome?
we'll have to figure up a name for it, but I can tell you this for sure, that when people take things and replace them for the energy, and that's what you're doing. You go out and you buy an expensive $250,000 car. You're not going to live in it. So why should you pay $250,000 for a car? And most of the time, I don't know how much people drive, but I only drive when I have to, So what I need a $300,000 car for? And so what it is that people have replaced their dignity. They've replaced their spiritual connectiveness. They've replaced all of the things that are valuable to us, that makes us real, viable human beings. And they replaced them with things. And capitalism fits right into that, because capitalism, you got this bubble up here, you got this head up here, all of the money's up here. I think it's like, 5% of the population controls 95% of the wealth. That means the other 95% only got that 5%.
Can you imagine?
And those people at the top, they control the prices. They say what goes up and what goes down. Even now, in this stressful time with COVID and all this stuff, the prices are constantly going up right now. And most people haven't even got back to work yet. In fact, the state here, the governor don't allow nobody to go into the offices no more. How are they going to afford this stuff? And they I don't know how they're doing where you are, but they put a moratorium on evictions. So now people can't raise your rent or raise your house note until after the governor lifts that moratorium. But you can bet the minute that he say you can, they're going to jack these prices up so high that most people have to move. And we are the ones, but we participated in a way, because we see this stuff happening, and yet we go and we participate in it. It's just like if you had, like, on a street here, you had 2 African shops. Our people would walk past those 2 African shops to shop with the Asian man or some other man down the street.
What is that? What kind of, I keep asking, what is that? We do it all the time, all of us.
We do it all. I drive all the way in town because I think out here we only got about 2 or 3 African shops. But I know everybody in the Bay Area, so I used to go to the market. We have what they call a big African market there in Berkeley on Saturday and Sunday. And I used to go in there and I buy everything that I need there, because I can buy it from my own people. And people say, why you drive way in here? I said, well, why should I give them people my money? They're not putting nothing back. They're not giving us anything back. But our people would do that all day. And you can stand outside of a store and tell them, these people will not treat you right. They treat your people like dirt, and they'll watch and see when you out of sight, and they'll go right in there and spend their money. it's unexplainable. The only thing, the explanation for it is that we desensitized to the degree that somehow, and you would think it would be the other way around, because if a black goes to South Africa, he gets treated like a white man. But if they see those white people there see somebody from America, they automatically change their tune because they know that these people know what they do. A lot of
Correct.
people, they know what they do. So we have to find a way to, we have to keep at it, because that's one of the things that we used to do. We did what we call block association. We would take one block off of a street and go to maybe it'd be about 6 or 8 houses, and we go to each one of those families, and we set up a meeting every week for everybody on that family, their kids, their nieces, their nephews, and make sure that they take care of their area where they live, their block, and teach them where to shop, and even offer them rides to go to, if they had to go out of their way to go to a black shop to go buy something, we would even arrange for that kind of stuff. And it's going to take a massive effort. It's not easy, but then, when you study history and you study scripture, you will see the footnotes of people who have struggled to make changes down through history. They may have killed them off, or they may have ran them into exile or whatever, for whatever reason, but yet and still somebody always took up the mantle and kept it moving. And
Correct.
I think that we have to keep moving the mountain and keep moving it forward. Mm-hmm. And like I tell my sons, I say, when I'm not here, you guys are going to have to fight this battle. You either fight this battle or you stop complaining about the conditions, because they constantly look at me because of what I've been teaching them. Dad, man, how come these people are so weird? I said, look, son, don't waste your energy on that. Spend your time figuring a way out where you don't have to be connected to them. Mm. That's how you overcome that, because you are not going to convince the powerful to give up their wealth. You're not going to convince those people to give up their position.
Sure.
There is no place in history, and I don't care how many thousands of years that you study, there's no place in history where you will see where any group was in power and they relinquished that power just because somebody came up and said, hey, you treated me bad.
Yes.
It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. And so we have to keep teaching our kids. Like my sons knew that. And I try to teach my grandbabies that as much as I have access to them, that, hey, and even though they're long distance, I get on the phone and talk to them, look at what's going on in the school today, what happened, what are you guys studying, what's this all about? You need to, and I tell them, you need to ask questions. You need to ask questions. Make them be responsive to you. And that was one of the things that we used to do, Dr. Adams and I, was we would teach the kids that these teachers, they get a paycheck for coming in here teaching you. Mm-hmm. Make them earn it. Make them earn it. Because I know when my youngest son, who stays here with me, when he was in the first grade out here, and I had this white woman up there, she talked to him like he was a rabbit. He come home with his homework and he said, Dad, I don't understand the homework. I said, what do you mean you don't understand it? That was the teacher's job, was to explain what you guys are supposed to be doing. She told me she didn't have time. So I went up to the school the next morning and I said, I'd like to talk to you about my son's homework. And I was congenial with her, trying to be nice. She said, I don't have time every time a child has a question. I said, well, how do you expect them to learn if they can't ask the question? Well, I'm just telling you, I've been teaching for 30 years, and if they want to get it, they'll get it. I said, well, I tell you what, my son ain't going to be in your class no more. I went to the principal. I said, I don't want this woman nowhere near my son. And see, you have to interact with these people so that your children will have a chance. And most people don't ever go to the school systems. But I went about to him. I said, I don't want this woman nowhere near my son. She got a bad attitude. And, she could tell me, I've been teaching for 30 years. And you trying to tell me how to teach? I said, I'm trying to tell you how to communicate with my son. You can teach any way you want. But as long as we are paying taxes and I brought him here for him to be educated, and you're going to tell him he can't ask the question, that goes back to when we integrated the schools in the South. Do you know when my first like when I was in 11th, 10th, 11th grade, we didn't do no class. We were integrating schools. The white teachers would not speak to us. Even if you raised your hand and said you had the answer to a problem, she'd look around you and call on somebody white. And that's the way these teachers do these kids right now. They just don't do it based on that process, but they still don't necessarily they don't want to teach black kids, especially young black boys. I had one student that they threw him out of school. He was they were playing basketball, and him and this other kid, his friend, he was horse playing. They wrote a letter up on this kid saying that they thought he was dangerous. And the reason they do that so they can get him out of the school system altogether. They don't want to teach him no more. So I sat down that night and I wrote out a letter and I said, I want to know what qualifies you to tell somebody's child that they're dangerous. Are you a psychologist? Are you a therapist? What's your role? Oh, I was a little upset then. We'll destroy the letter. I said, I've advised the parent to file a suit against you because you're wrong. She was ready to ruin this kid's life. And the kid was a good student. He was a straight A student. But a lot of these white teachers, and you'll find in the schools out here, most of them are white women. You find very few males and even fewer African American teachers, because the system is so screwed up, they don't want to work in it no more. So it's left to these little white girls that come out of college. They don't know nothing about communication, so you can't teach. How you can teach and you don't know nothing about communication is beyond me. So what's going on now is these kids are going through these schools, and unless they, have a strong, they're not going to be successful. Yes.
So we have to create our own, teach our own. But the normalcy that each race takes care of its own. I mean, it isn't really even. Sometimes I think, but isn't ages we give it up.
Well, here, and that's another thing. I was back in the day when they integrated the schools here. We tried to tell people then. I wasn't an activist, but I had sense enough to know we don't want to go to school with white kids because we knew it couldn't be nothing but a bad outcome, no way you look at it. But there was a certain amount of black people that wanted to go to school with them because they felt like their children would get a better education. And all they got was discriminated against. Because like I said, when I was in 11th, 12th grade, we didn't take no classes because they had the National Guard, they had the state police, and they had the city police over there to keep us separated all day long, marching us from class to class. How can you learn in an environment like that? But yet still, black people, oh yeah, I want my kid to go over there. They got a good new school over there. It don't make no difference. Just like the woman I was talking about a while ago, they got a house with all the rooms that they don't go in. What difference does it make if you got this big, beautiful school and it's not like learning nothing? See, we're too busy looking at the glitter of what something looks like versus what something is. Once again, we're talking about that irrational thinking process that we are incapable of understanding and making a rational decision. So
we can buy those structures. It's not a problem. Then we integrate, like, I want to be babysitting the kids or doing something that is constructive for us. Is it time that we should start actually thinking on putting these structures? It doesn't matter how small it is. We would have to start somewhere. I mean, I take the words of Chinua Achebe, who said, if you don't like my book, write your own. That's simple.
But yeah, and you're absolutely right. We can, when Dr. Adams and I was teaching school out there in East Oakland, we demonstrated to them that those worst kids that they had in that school could learn under the right conditions.
Mm-hmm.
They, what they did to show you how bad they want our students to fail. The next year when we went back when school was open, they told us they didn't need us anymore.
What?
And then we told them we'll volunteer. They said, well, we don't have any rooms for you here. So you can't volunteer because we don't have any space. We know there were empty rooms in the building that we're in. But this is how they operate, because some of the teachers were complaining because they didn't like the fact that Dr. Adams and I was getting better reception,
Mm-hmm.
and other students were asking to come to our classes because they knew that there was a connection after school if they came to our classes because we had field trips for them. We took them to basketball games at the arena. We picked them up on the weekend, when we weren't busy with our own families, and take them out on field trips and teach them how that they don't have to live their life standing on the corner in front of a liquor store with their pants down below their ankles. And it works. It's just a matter of demonstration. Some people learn better by seeing than they do by you speaking. When they see Black men come into the school system teaching and bring real structure, but they also demonstrate, I'm not doing this because I don't like you, because you're a Black child. I'm doing this because it's my responsibility to teach you. And I'm not going to let you deny the rest of these students the right to be taught by interrupting my classroom. And we never had to put anybody out of class. And even the ones who would get up and get angry once in a while and leave, which is expected because you're dealing with kids who come up from a long history of trauma, they would always come back. They learn how to apologize. Some of them never said they were sorry in their life. They learn how to come back and apologize to the class and say, we will not disrupt your class again. Have a seat. Welcome them back. But we have people who are running these systems now that our kids are like throwaway kids.
Mm.
Don't worry about them. They're not going to accomplish anything anyway. And somebody has to be there as a stopgap to say, no, you're not throwing those kids away.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last question, Rev. We still have 15 minutes. Probably if we want to open up some lines and the lines and take up some questions. If anyone has a question or a recommendation or, a commentary, the lines are open. You can call using our WhatsApp number, +491578211237. Today, we're starting with a warm-up show to just like, how do we communicate and how do we exit from this European psychology of what the Reverend is saying or the doctor is saying, like, you can't be taught by, I don't know, or no, put it in the right form. I like the way you put it, like,
I think it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic to think that the people who control you and want to maintain control over you is going to teach you how to overcome that. That's
sure.
not what it is. They're not going to do it. And we're hoping that somehow they will, by the generousness in their heart, is going to change all of a sudden. And so we have been treating those people horribly. Let's have a new leaf here and turn around and do it the right way. It ain't going to happen. You see what's going on in America now. They're trying to turn back the clock. Now they don't want people voting because now I think they're predicting by 2040 that the minorities will be the largest populous voting pack in this country. And therefore, white folks at the power level feel like they're losing their grip because if they don't control the politics, then they can't control the banks, the money, how the money flows, how much things are going to cost. And so that's what we up against. They're not going to change. So if we want realistically an opportunity for our children, for our grandchildren, and we want to leave a legacy for them, we had better change. And we better do it now, because every day that we don't change, another child gets lost, another kid gets sent to prison, another kid gets killed. More people get killed in the streets of America at the hands of the police than got killed in Afghanistan, for what they tell me. And people say, well, that's black on black crime. Well, you can say that, yeah. But what happens to people when you create a condition that makes it impossible for them to live? The first thing they start to do is to destroy stuff. It's just like when people ride and tear up places. They don't go out to the suburbs and ride. They ride where the places where they live at. They start at home, And so we have to get people to understand that, destroying your own property at a place where you got to live is not going to change their mind, because first of all, they make more money off of it. Insurance companies come in and put those places right back up. And a lot of times, just like with New Orleans, when they wanted to get rid of all those people after the flood, you know what? They don't build those places back because they didn't want a lot of those people back in the in the Ninth Ward and places down there. So those buildings to this day, how long has it been since the flood in New Orleans? It's been quite a few years. They haven't built that stuff back, and a lot of those people had to move to Alabama and all those other surrounding states because there's nowhere for because they really wanted them out of there because what? New Orleans is a tourist trap. New Orleans is like Las Vegas. It's like Atlantic City. It's like Disney World. You know, they make a lot of money with these entities. They don't want nobody disrupted, and they certainly don't want no low-income housing interrupted the same way that they're doing those people down in Los Angeles. They want to remove. They're homeless. They ain't got nowhere to go, so they move the toilets and they walk around carrying buckets on the street. But what do you think is going to happen there? They can't lock them up. It's time for us to do our diligence and stand up for what is right. You stand up. When you stand up, here's the thing. When you stand up for your child, you're standing up for my child.
Absolutely. Right.
It's not just you. It's not just you.
I'm picking up this call. All right. Hello? Yes. Hello?
I'm trying to get through on the show.
Yes, you're on the show, but your volume is so low. I think also because you, all right. I increased my own volume. I think it was from my end. Yes, you're on the show. Go on. Welcome.
Welcome. It's nice to talk to you. I love your show.
Thank you so very much, sister.
I'm calling from Rochester, New York.
Rochester.
Okay. And I really enjoyed the show, and I think that we just need to get out of here. They don't want us here. They don't treat us right. I want to come home.
Yes, yes. It's time. I mean, if we hear 15,000 homeless on the street when we have 60% of arable land on the motherland with no infrastructure, nothing on it, villages and communities are empty, homes are there to take people. What are we doing? We have to go back home. It's so simple.
Yeah, we do. And a lot of people are afraid of the risk of doing that because, you know, there always seems to be some type of turmoil going on with presidents getting assassinated. But hey, there's a price that has to be paid for us to regain our strength and our freedom. It's not going to go easy. People have gave up their life many times in this country for us to be where we are now, and that's not very far. You know, so we need to be making arrangements. In fact, one of the in Uganda, we want to start working with a school there to get kids food and stuff like that. So we have to start reaching out. I want to connect with them over there. You know, maybe one time when we do a show, I can talk to those people if they can get connected up, or we can find out what they need and we can start supporting each other across the continent, across the ocean. We need to do that, to send that message that, hey, we want to help you at home, but we want to come home. But we got to build up a place for us to come. You know, we need to have some structure in place for us to come. It does no good for us to move out from under these Europeans, under some other Europeans, the Dutch and the French and the British and all those other people that are controlling the banks.
Right.
Control the banks. Yeah, we need to get out from under those structures.
Correct. Sister, do you have a plan? Are you looking to relocate or something, or to repatriate? Because we have all those services in place. I'm listening.
I know. I've been on the website, and yes, I'm looking and planning.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Can we talk after the show? We taking really questions and we connecting people, and we've been sending a lot of people, and most of them, like the Reverend is saying, they're very, very happy being, but of course they have to make their own experiences. And that's also going to be a show where we want to bring people that are in these various countries that are just gone. I mean, we're talking about 6 months or 3 months or even 2 months today, and to give back their experience. A lot actually saying, just come. Every other thing, we'll fix it when we get home. just looking and saying they assassinate people. What is more easier than they kill us and put a foot on our neck every time out here than die? I better die at the motherland where I know my ancestors are there or whatever.
Yeah,
Come on. We have enough.
It's not going to change until we change it, and that's the bottom line. Somebody has to go out there and carry the water.
Okay, I'll connect to you, sister.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm sorry, Rev. It's just like, both coming. Yes, you were saying something. We have to change. We have to connect. We have to do this. On the Pan-African Daily, we are just like the facilitator, being the African migrants in the diaspora, we understand both sides. So a lot of projects have been going on, particularly just this 1 year after this awakening really got into process. So we have connections all over. I mean, I'm even talking about diasporans that have actually been on the continent, those that have been there for long, those that are even going, those that are on their way. We have a couple that just arrived, I think that was last week, and they're settled. And we have a lot of them. We have some also that have made really difficult experiences, I must confess that, but they are saying it is still better. It is still better because we also reintegrate it. We have to reintegrate into the system. We have to learn everything. Like you're saying, the education, we're not going to stay here and learn it. We have to start from somewhere. And I think this spirit is what actually the Pan-African Daily TV is promoting. That's why when we bring scholars and experts, particularly freedom fighters, liberators, activists, advocacy, people that are saying, yes, this is the situation. This is where we are now. This is where we want to go to connect that. So, Rev, if you need any contact in any country with your ministry, with your university to collaborate, and that's just what we do on the Pan-African Daily TV. Yes.
Great. That's great. That's wonderful to know that, because we are trying to reach out. In fact, I have some friends who have moved, and I get messages from them.
Okay, I'll pick up your call.
Daily to let me know what they're doing and so forth. So, one of the I certainly, I admonish anybody to just take off and go experience whatever you got an opportunity, because you don't want to wait around here thinking that it's going to change.
Yes.
And because if you study anything about the history of America, it has not changed, and it's not going to change, because they are not about to hand you the keys to the kingdom.
I have a caller that is calling, and I know he's calling because he's just arrived and he wants to tell us all of it. Come home. Hello.
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 How are you, Dr. Tata?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, everyone is hearing you.
Great. So honored to hear Baba Kweku. I love the work he's doing with our children. I have two questions or considerations for him to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the momentum that we are experiencing as Black, African, original people in the world, whether we're on the continent, on the diaspora, in the diaspora, there seems to be this momentum of memory and history. Everybody's kind of waking up.
Yes.
My question is to Baba Kweku is, he mentioned something about, he suggested perhaps at the moment that our children are in kindergarten is the best time for us to instruct and advise them of their history so that they would be equipped with self-knowledge.
Correct.
My concern is, have we lost a generation of, and I mean by the generation, I mean ages 12 through 39. Have we lost them?
No, you know what? I'm glad you asked that question, because I hear that so much. People would tell Dr. Adams and I that those are lost kids. That's what you mean they're lost. They're not dead. They're still here. And let me just say this. I've seen some of the
Don't wait. All right. Are you still asking or?
Right.
All right. Because I think that you're now I'm talking to the caller. You're listening to the show and it's reflecting. Do you still want to ask the question or now the Reverend can answer?
Yeah, I know what you wanted to answer, and I was going to try.
Okay, go ahead. He was still on.
But as I was saying before that little incident took place there, is
Yes.
that we hear this all the time now. Well, this is a lost generation. The 70s group is dead. The 80s, the 90s group, and it's the same thing. I've even worked with veterans. Used to run the homeless shelter for veterans in Berkeley. And guys would be 55. They say, man, it's too late for me. I said, what do you mean it's too late? That is a to feed us attitude, and plus the fact, since when do you get too old to change? We have to recognize, what is wrong with us, and that will take place through exposing ourselves to information. If you want things to be different, then you have to go to some different places. You can't go to the same places and expect to meet different people. So we have to teach people those things. And I used to teach guys that, and they, these guys had kids they hadn't seen, I hadn't spent time with in years. And I teach them, I said, look, sit down. They don't want to see it. I said, sit down and write them a letter. And write them a letter every day until they answer you, whenever you got time. And you'd be surprised at the guys that reconnected with their kids. Because here's the thing, if we say that there's a generation of lost fathers there, then you almost saying there's a generation of lost kids. And, and like if it's a generation of lost mothers, then the kid, where do the kids get the food for nurturing at? Because everybody now, I've been in homes where the grandmother was 35 years old. You know what I'm saying? And so it's a whole different vibration that we're dealing with. And so we have to leave the door open, because I've seen people walk in that I thought was totally, totally worthless. There was nothing we could do for them. In fact, I had a guy come to me one time, and he would fall out in the floor and have these what they call grand mal seizures. He had abused himself so much that he would have these seizures, and they had told him that one of these days you're going to have one, that's going to be the end of it. And so he would come to the center where I was working, and I told him, it shows you sometimes you have to show tough love, and you have to at the same time let a person know that you care, but let them know you're not going to participate in their demise. And I told him, I said, look, do not come here again until you're ready to get yourself together. I said, when you do that, I'm going to get you a job. And you know what he did? He never came back there. He came back there and he said, I want to volunteer. He came back there and he cleaned up our office space for about 6 months, went back to school. Now he's an electrician.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. It's never too late. It's just that there's nobody there to give these people a lift up. And I don't mean give them a handout, but I'm talking about give them something vital that they can hold on to, that would give them that feeling of that I belong to something. Because most of these people, it's a shame to go to a shelter and see all these grown men and they got kids all over the place. It's a shame, because their kids are somewhere hurting, want to know why my father's not in my life. And they're hurting because they're saying, oh, my life is over. I screwed up. I didn't take care of my responsibility. But I tell them, it's never, you can always go back and you can always say you're sorry. But not only just saying you're sorry, but once you make the commitment to say you're sorry, then you have to do something to make up for the harm and damage that you've done. And that can be done. Kids don't want to hate nobody. I've seen kids that had never seen their kids, and they wind up hating their mothers because they didn't see the fathers, because they thought their mothers was at fault because their fathers weren't in their life. And so, but the minute that you put these people together and teach them that, hey, wait a minute, you have something here tangible that nobody else can give you, and you should let nobody take it away from you. You have a connection as a father and a daughter, father and a son, a mother and a son. those connections are real. There's nothing closer to godliness than that family dynamic there.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get them to understand that the only thing that's going to hold that family together and help it to develop is that they have to believe in one another. They have to trust one another.
Correct.
And one of the things that you see with a lot of people out here doing all kind of things is they don't trust nobody. They don't love nobody because
Mm.
number one, you can't give somebody something you don't have. If
Sure.
you don't have love, if you don't love yourself, and you're gonna tell me you love me, so you got these things that they make their common sense. They're not stuff that you're gonna find in the most important textbooks you're gonna read in the school. But once a person get those things, once they get that dynamic working, when they start to question and understand the difference between right and wrong, and they said the insanity thing is the imbalance of the inability to understand the rational from the unrational from the rational, and it's basically what it is. Once you realize that you have power over the things that have you crippled,
Mhm.
once you realize you have power over that, if you can defeat that, you can defeat something else. You do one thing, and I tell people all the time, don't try to do everything at once.
Yes.
You did not get the way you are, and you might spend 20, 30 years getting this way. And I used to teach these yoga classes. Now it's okay. You write down, it's just like when I did marriage couple counseling. I said, write down the things on one side of a sheet of paper that you don't like about yourself, and on the other side, write down the things that you like. And it's amazing, what people would go through, because I know I went through it myself. And I remember doing this exercise, and I was telling this guy, I said, man, he said, Quaker, you're not writing. I said, man, I can't think of nothing good about it to say. He said, you can't think of that good. Something that you like about yourself. And then he started breaking it down, making it simple for me, simplifying it. There's something you like about yourself. Well, I like this. Okay, we'll put that down. And all those bad things that you got down, just take one or two of them a week. Say, I'm going to remove this. And maybe I smoke cigarettes. I'm not going to smoke cigarettes. Or maybe I use too much foul language. I'm not going to use the foul language. See, these are training modules to help you become successful.
Correct.
And you'll realize that I've accomplished those two things. Now I can take on a couple more of them. But if you try to do it all at once, then you become overwhelmed the way you've already been overwhelmed by this and saturation of misinformation till it's impossible for you to conceive the probability of you healing and coming out of that and being a healthy human being. And that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it's I would rather not have to do it, but I would rather be doing it than not have somebody not do it.
Absolute.
Because without people like us out here getting the message out there, talking to people, in spite of the negative stuff that we're going to get back sometime. It's like when I was on the radio the other night, and there was a few guys on there was really acting up, and the sister was embarrassed, and she said, I don't want to bring you on there with these people anymore. I said, they're not embarrassing me, they're embarrassing themselves. Because anytime that you allow yourself to be so distracted or ignorant to the facts that you're not willing to investigate, or you're not willing to do any research, you just want to scream and tell everybody else on the planet they're wrong, but you're right. Isn't that where they are? People are they're in this cocoon. They can't get out. They don't know how to get out. But that same person, I've seen people who would act just as crazy or out of character as you want to see a person act. But you get that same person alone and say, brother, I'm not your enemy. Oh,
Right.
man, they come off like, oh, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have acted the way I acted. I said, well, look, from this moment point, can we be respectful to each other? A lot of people don't. It's simple stuff. It's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say hello. Just because you disagree with somebody, you don't have to hate them. And that's one of the things that you learn in this society. If you watch the news, in America, you see them on that screaming at each other back and forth. And I sit and I watch it sometimes. I say, do they really realize the example that they're setting? Because some of these people, I'm sure they got kids at home watching them and do their shows and stuff, you know. But they're on there talking loud to each other, cutting each other off, and the one is not going to give up his position, and the other one is not going to give up his position. Somebody need to be wise enough to say, "Hey, wait a minute. You have your opinion, I have mine. Let's go back and let's do some more research." Isn't it? Because us calling each other names and yelling at each other serves no purpose but to create more division. And we don't need more division. We need more togetherness.
That's so true. Rev, I can guarantee you, and I'm thankful that you're here and that you would find that we would have the honor to have you again. The difference on the Pan-African Daily is we are just all learning. We're all coming back home, and we're so grateful when we have elders like you, specialists, expert. What time can we can how much grateful can we be? And I think the conscious Africans, like, or the conscious us that are coming, those that are getting on the path to being healed, are holding the hands of those that are really still sick. So on the Pan-African, we are so happy. We just listen. We learn. It's not a debate. And I think other platforms or any other thing, there's a difference between us having this lecture and a debate. We don't argue. We don't come here to disagree or to say, oh, no, you know, because you don't know. No, all we know is we're just humbly happy to have you educate us and even to have that access of knowledge, because one of the things that has kept us as Africans today is because we never had our own teachers. And now that we are having, what is the point again for us to even disagree and to be grateful that the Creator is putting these ancestors, these elders, these scholars, this expert for free? What more time can we benefit? You know, just like asking these questions, getting access to you, having your time here. How much time? You could have been relaxing and doing something else. So I think in as much as we're getting our memory and we're connecting back to history, we should also come with the spirit to learn, just to listen sometimes. We've been doing all the wrong things, thinking that we know. We're coming home now just to listen and learn.
I do it myself now. I go out to meetings where I know it's going to be different people out from different backgrounds, and I will be as inconspicuous as possible because I don't want nobody to ask me no questions. I just want to live and learn today. Because you can't talk all the time and learn anything. You have to listen. And when you listen, you have to, what Malcolm said, you have to hear. It's not just a matter of listening, you have to hear what they're saying. Because most people who disagree with each other, if you get down to the crux of the intellectual dialogue that's going on, you find out that they're not that far apart. It's just that we come from this environment of attacking each other. You see people looking at you. I listened to a brother there. He was saying that when you pass a brother on the street, say hello. Don't give him that. You know, I don't want to connect with you attitude. That's that thing cremates throughout America. And I'm even when I remember when I was in New York, you know, and you know, as a kid, and my cousin then was trying to teach me about the street. They said, "Man, you don't be speaking to people you don't know." I said, "Well, if I make eye contact with and they look like they want to speak, I speak." What's wrong with that? But this is I think it's kind of something that's embedded in American culture, especially in these large metropolis places where people are afraid of everybody. They don't trust nobody. I try to live my life as if everybody is good and you know, there ain't no bad people. Sure, there's bad stuff out there. Sure, there's bad stuff can happen. But the reality of it is you're going to see more good than you're going to see bad. Because if that's what all you see is bad, that's all you're going to see is bad because you're looking for it. When I'm out there, I'm looking to make a connection with somebody new that I can learn something from, and I can take it and share it with somebody else. That's what community is about. That's what communal means. Let's come together. Let's love each other. Let's fight for each other's right. And more importantly, we need to fight for our children.
Yes.
Because they have to come up behind us. And if we don't set the standard for how to deal with this madness, they're going to be in the same category where a lot of us are still out here confused not knowing what to do, unhappy. Life is not supposed to be one big, long, unhappy, sorry episode. We were put here on this planet for a purpose.
Mm.
We are the leaders. We are the designers. We're the people who are supposed to show people this is the way it's done if you want to be happy. You want your children to be happy. This is what you have to do. We have to do that. They're not going to do it. We are sitting back, letting somebody else take control of our community, our household, our school, everything that we have to be connected to. Somebody else is in control of it. No more. We can't allow that anymore. If we change it one stick at a time, we just change it one stick at a time. But every day you get up, if you meet three more people and you pass the word on those three people, and we connect with some people on the motherland or wherever they are on the universe, if we connect with those people and we're working together to bring about this here global initiative called African Community, African United States of the world, we can bring that about. And I tell people all the time, they say, Kweku, how you know that's going to happen? I said, because the creator that I believe in tells me that's what's going to happen. Not no preacher, not somebody's book that's been misinterpreted or rewritten so that we to baffle us even more. It's just that I know innately, no matter what people say about me, you know what? I know that I'm a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say what you want about me, but I'm still a good person. And as long as I know that I'm a good person, then I'm going to get up and try to do good things.
Ashe, Ashe. We are so grateful. We are thankful. We're thankful, Doc. We're so thankful. I mean, like I said, we're not here to discredit any other, but I think the spirit has to come also from us. This humility, we can't even move ahead. Lack of respect. Sometimes we just lost the energy, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about. This European psychology of, I don't know, where does it really start that we don't even listen? We argue. We know too much. We know too much. We just know too much. Listen. We are so thankful on the Pan African Daily, each and every one of you elders that is opting to come to teach us, that is coming to give us, like you said, we give you the mantle.
I'm more than happy to come here anytime you guys want me to do it. Love to work with anybody as long as they're, as Margot said, genuinely interested in uplifting our people. I don't care what it is. I'm there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. But Rev, before you go, how do they reach you? Because I know each time a guest come here, I'll be the one to be answering all the questions. How can I get in contact?
Okay, well, you can go to my website at www.familysolutioninc.com.
Family Solution.
Inc. Yes, Family Solution, not with an S on it. FamilySolutionInc.com. And you can go to my website. It's under construction. There's a lot of stuff going on with it right now. But you can go to it and see some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in the very, very near future. In fact, we haven't even got it all on there. But they can reach me at 707-344-3919.
Or I can also give, I have your contact. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, I can put them together with you, right? On the WhatsApp. Beautiful.
And we're able to do sessions. And that's one of the other things. And like I tell people, I don't particularly like doing sessions Zoom style, but
yes,
however we can, the best position we can get people in so that we can get information to help them. Like since we've been sitting here, I've gotten 2 marriage couples that want me to come on and see them. And because we haven't been seeing a lot of people because this COVID thing's jumping off.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know where it's going, but my thing is I'm going to try to help people as much as I can because I'm not working anymore. The work I do is what is my life.
Correct.
I have this nonprofit that's my life. And so I'm certainly not going to get rich doing it. And that's not my idea. My idea is that I will be a useful human being, will be beneficial to mankind, that we have a responsibility. My grandfather always said this. We have a responsibility to leave the world better than what we found it.
Mm-hmm.
That's our charge. Sure, there's going to be stuff out there, but you can't let it impede where you're on your way to. And we have to keep doing it, keep moving forward, one step at a time, one brother at a time, one sister at a time, one child at a time. And by all means, if you ever have an opportunity, I always tell people, if you see a child in trouble, even if they don't even look like they want to talk to you, stop and talk to them. Because you can usually tell them when you see them. Stop and talk to them. Because I've been I tell you this one story, and then I'm going to let you guys go. I had this one family call me up, and she had a 17-year-old son. Now, the first thing that automatically went through my mind was he probably doesn't have a mother or father in the home, so he's acting up. They brought him to me because he had got in a fight at school. And it turns out he was a pretty good kid, and I saw him a few sessions. And I try to learn as much as I can about a family dynamic before I get into any deep stuff. So I asked him, I said, well, do you and your father ever have any conversation about this stuff? And he said, no. I said, well, your father lives with you, right? He said, yeah. He said, but we have never. Can you believe that a child live in a house with a man that never had a conversation with him? He's 17 years old. Never had a conversation. And I didn't want to act like I was shocked out of my mind, you know what I mean? But I said that. Yeah, now I see what this child's dilemma is. How in the world do you live in a house, your flesh and blood, and you don't have a conversation with them?
17 years.
17 years. He said, well, anything that goes on, my mother tells me. I said, but you still have a father. And it was almost like part of the cultural thing that they had adopted for their family. And I just thought it was just strange that you don't have a relationship with your father and you live in a house with him. Doesn't make any sense. And this is what we're up against out here when we're trying to deal with people. And when we come in and try to tell them stuff, they don't understand it because the message they're getting where they live or where they commune at is something totally different. So naturally, they reject anything outside of that. And now we have to open it up and say, no, look here. I'm not here to hurt you. If I can't help you, I'm gone. I'm here to see whatever I can do to put you on your right path. Or if I can help you get on the right path, I'm all for that. I don't want nothing from you. I just want to be your friend, your communal partner, one who helps to uplift all of us. Because every time I love to work with children. I do. I really love to work with children because, well, it's not that they're easier to work with, but they seem to be able to identify love and affection and trust. And it's just like that more so than somebody older. It seems like when people get up in age, they've given up on all those attributes. With children, you're able to say, wait a minute, if your father did that, that wasn't the right way to do it. If your mother did it that way. I mean, I've seen that some mothers were tougher than some of the fathers, and you have to reach those young people. I said, then if your parents acting like that, then you have to be the adult and you go back in and show them that you're going to be different. Maybe they'll change. A child can go into a house that's in disarray and his attitude can change and that whole dynamic will start to change.
Correct. Yeah.
So, like I say, I'm glad anytime I can be a part of the conversation to help and assist anybody in the diaspora, I am 100% behind that.
Thank you so much, Rev. Thank you. Thank you. We are also happy to have you. Share your precious time and moments with us. What gift do we really want? To go and ask and pay even to get wrong information than to get love for free from your own, a gift. Somebody that doesn't even know you here, who would help you if they don't even know you, if you don't look like them? Today we have elders that are just coming up. I love kids. I like to help. I just want to give. I want to serve. I want to help my people. Which type of job is even more important than that? How much money you get for what kind of employment? What?
Nothing more important than that. When they bury you or however you decide to leave this planet, I don't want to put on no gravestone that Kweku was richer. He had this. He left this. Just say he was a good man. He did the best he could with what he had.